Hey Michael, did we make it?
Let me check the date. 2nd of September 2022. Yes, we're here. We did it.
Okay, let's start. Hello and welcome to Mysteries of Science. My name's Stevie and I'm the Deputy Editor of Science and Nature, the monthly magazine from the team behind The Week Junior.
And I'm Michael, the Junior Editor. On this podcast, we take a look at our favourite mysteries of science. These are the strange phenomena and bizarre events that have left scientists scratching their heads and, despite their best efforts, remain well and truly unsolved.
This is the first episode of Season 4 of Mysteries of Science, and we've just come from the future to tell you what an incredible season we have in store for you.
Yes, we're going to be looking at everything from whether luck exists and if your computer is smarter than you, to looking for ghosts and the lost city of Atlantis.
But first, we're going to be looking at one of science's biggest mysteries, time travel.
Now, we've all seen time travel in books, in films, on TV shows, but could we actually do it in real life? And are there some time travelers already living amongst us? Come with us and let's go back to the future. This is Mysteries of Science.
So Michael, time travel, where do we start? The past, the present, the future?
Well, maybe all of the above. For many of us, what we know about time travel comes from stories, whether those be in books or films, where characters go from their present to the past, then to the future, and then back to the present again.
A lot of what I know about time travel does come from Doctor Who.
Yes, me too. One of my all-time favourite TV shows, and also Back to the Future, one of my favourite films.
Maybe to find out whether or not time travel is actually possible, we should start by speaking to someone who's written a time travel story.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Karen Ingalls. I'm a children's author. I live in Barnes in southwest London, and I write across a range of age groups. I write picture books, chapter books for sort of 6 to 8 year olds, and also middle grade novels for 8 to 12 year olds.
Karen wrote the time travel book The Secret Lake and its sequel Return to the Secret Lake. Now, the idea for the books came to her when she saw children playing in a communal garden in London.
I just got this sort of tingly feeling, a magical feeling of adventure, and I was starting to think back to those adventure books I read as a child. I was thinking how magical it must be for these children in the middle of London to have such freedom. And then, with the crack of the twigs and the echo against these vast buildings, I suddenly had this second moment where I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be magical if the children playing here today could meet the children who lived and played here 100 years ago. And in that moment I knew there had to be a story, and as the children were running into their little bushes I thought, oh, maybe there'll be something in a bush that will take them to this other world. So that was my tingly moment for The Secret Lake, and that wouldn't go away until the story was written.
Now, writing a time travel story must come with its fair share of difficulties. What did you find most challenging?
Well, one of the things is making sure that you get your timelines all correct. And in fact, when I did the very first draft of The Secret Lake, I sort of thought, okay, it's fantastic, because for children who don't know the story, it's about Stella and Tom. They're trying to find their elderly neighbour's missing dog, and in so doing, they crawl into a bush and they find a tunnel. It takes them down into their gardens, and they meet the children living there 100 years earlier who were actually living in their house. And so unfolds some mysteries and events, and there's a young boy, Jack, who's in trouble, and they go back and forth in time. But somewhere in that we've got characters who potentially might be alive in both times, and it's trying to get the timeline correct to make sure that everything makes sense in both worlds, I suppose. And at one point my husband was counting back and said, well, if that were the case, this person would be 127 or something. So you have to be a little bit. There's challenges there in making sure that you get your time chunks correct, I suppose.
So writing time travel stories is hard. Lots of timelines to keep track of, and yet there are so many of them. So why are time travel stories so popular?
I think it is, and I think it's also one of those things, I don't know, when I was wondering where did we all come from and where are we going next? And time travel is a way to explore that and meet real people in those other times. And what's especially exciting is having those characters from the past and the present rub up against each other. I know this from the feedback from The Secret Lake, the children absolutely adore the fact that they can imagine that they're right there alongside the children, rooting with them, part of their team also in that situation. And it's just sort of fascinating and magical. And the great thing, of course, about being a children's author, we can make these things happen. As long as you get your magic right and the plot holds true. It's a wonderful escape for lots of children as well.
So time travel stories offer us an escape, but I wonder whether they can offer us a blueprint as well. Could we learn how to time travel based on a time travel story?
Well, Stevie, what if I told you that a time travel book inspired a real-life scientist to try and prove that time travel is possible?
Now we're talking.
My name is Ron Mallett, and I'm a professor emeritus of physics at the University of Connecticut. My specialty is Einstein's general theory of relativity.
When he was 10 years old, Ron's father died of a heart attack, and not long after that, he came across one of the classic time travel stories.
It was H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. It was a classics illustrated version of it. And in it, on the very first page, it said, scientific people know very well that time is only a kind of space, and we can move forward and backward in time just as we can in space. And I thought, wait a minute, if we can move backward in time, then maybe if I had a time machine, I could go back to the past and see him again and tell him what was going to happen and maybe save his life. So that became a bit of an obsession for me to try to do that. Now, you have to remember, I was about 11 at this particular time, and I tried to, this magazine had a picture on it of what the time machine might look like. And so what I tried to do, my mother had kept his old television and radio parts, and I tried to put something together with bicycle parts and everything to try to mimic what I thought it looked like. And of course, when I plugged it in, nothing happened. And I was disappointed, but I wasn't discouraged because it said scientific people know very well. So I know I was going to have to learn something about science, and that I didn't exactly know what. But that was when, a year after that, when I was about 12, I came across the second book that changed my life.
Now, this second book is where science fiction meets science fact and concerns a scientist who you may have heard of, Albert Einstein.
And I saw the cover of a book, a paperback, and it had a picture of Einstein on it. But in any case, Einstein was standing next to an hourglass. So I thought maybe this genius has something to do with time. And so I got the paperback, and even though it was hard going, I did pick up the essence. It said that unlike the old physics of Newton, where according to Newton, nothing can alter time. Time just flows independently of us. According to Einstein, there are ways that you can alter time. And so that became my second obsession. I thought, if this Einstein says that you can affect time, then I have to learn about him and learn about what he did. So that was the beginning of my journey into physics, you might say, the science of time travel.
So it sounds like Einstein and his theory of general relativity might be the key to finding out whether or not we can actually travel through time. But what is that exactly? What is the science of time travel?
So there's two parts to this. The first is Einstein's special theory of relativity. Now, this basically says that time is affected by speed. So the faster you go, time slows down for you compared to other people.
So if you were traveling fast enough, let's say you were traveling in a rocket that was going close to the speed of light, time would slow down for you. So if you're traveling to a distant star and back, for you it may feel as though only a few years is passing. But for everyone else who isn't traveling fast, decades could be passing. So if you come back, you could come back and find out that you're only a few years older, but everyone on Earth is decades older. And that's in fact what you see in the movies. In other words, that would mean that you travel into the future of the Earth.
So that's a way we could travel into the future. But what about traveling into the past?
Well, that's where Einstein's second theory comes in.
His second theory, which took 10 years later, was called the general theory of relativity. And in that theory, what Einstein said was that time is affected by gravity. What he meant by that was that the stronger gravity is, the more time will slow down. So, for example, time at the surface of the Earth, where gravity is strong, will be slowing down compared to time at a high altitude.
So the further away you are from the Earth's gravitational pull, the more time speeds up?
Exactly.
Okay. So we have Einstein's two theories. One is that time is affected by speed, so the faster you go, time slows down for you compared to other people.
And the second is that time is affected by gravity, so the further away you are from the Earth's gravitational pull, time speeds up for you compared to other people.
So where does Ron's idea for time travel come in?
In Einstein's theory, space and time are connected to each other. In fact, it's called space-time. Whatever you do to space also happens to time. Now, here's a simple experiment that you can do for yourself. Imagine that you take a strip of paper and you draw a straight line on that paper, okay? That line is what we call a timeline. At the bottom of that line, put the past, yesterday. At the middle of that line, draw a little line called the present, today. And at the top of that line, put tomorrow, the future. All of us throughout our whole life, even though we're not aware of it, we travel along a timeline from the past to the present to the future. So imagine you take that strip of paper and you make a loop out of it. In other words, you take the top of the loop and you connect it to the bottom. So you make a loop out of that strip of paper. Now, imagine that you could travel. In fact, you could just take your finger and move it along. You move it from the past along the strip of paper to the present, continue along that strip of paper to the future. But remember, you've connected the bottom of the line to the top of the line. So you could actually travel from the future back to the past.
So according to Einstein, by folding space, you can fold time and travel through time the way you would travel through space.
But how can you fold space?
Well, Ron thinks that you might be able to do it using circulating beams of laser light. And this is based on another one of Einstein's theories that light can affect gravity.
When I was studying the fact that Einstein said that light can create gravity, I realized the following. Let's follow this logically. Remember, gravity can affect time. So what I was able to show mathematically, what I did was to solve Einstein's gravitational field equations for a circulating beam of light. Now, what do I mean by that? It turns out that if you use a laser beam and you bounce a laser beam off of mirrors, you can get light to move around in a loop. Okay, and in fact, there's a real device that's called a ring laser that allows you to use a laser beam to create a circulating beam of light. And what I realized was that this circulating beam of light could twist space. Here's a simple example. Once again, think about this. Suppose you have a cup of coffee in front of you, and think of the coffee and the cup as being like empty space. Think of your spoon as being like a circulating light beam. What happens if you take the spoon and start stirring the coffee? The coffee starts swirling around. That's what the circulating laser beam will do to empty space. And remember, once again, I said that time is embedded in space. So as I'm twisting space, I can twist time into a loop. And along that loop in time, I could travel back into the past. So what I was able to show mathematically is that by using a circulating beam of laser light, it's possible to twist space and then twist time into a loop. And theoretically, that could allow the possibility of traveling back into the past.
So that's Ron's theory, but how can we test it?
So until we decide that we really want to do this and then provide the funding for it, it's not going to happen. So the short answer is it will happen when there's adequate funding for it to happen.
So it might be a long time before we get to see whether or not Ron's theory is correct.
Yes, watch this space, or should I say watch this space time. But Stevie, what if I told you there were actually real-life time travelers already living amongst us?
What? What do you mean?
Well, remember what Ron was telling us about Einstein's theory of relativity?
Yes, that speed and gravity can affect time.
Well, what people can you think of who travel at very fast speeds and who move away from the Earth's gravity?
Astronauts.
Exactly.
But hang on. They're up in space, so Earth's gravitational pull is weaker, meaning time should move faster for them than people on Earth.
But at the same time, they're travelling very, very fast, so time should move slower for them than people on Earth.
So do those two cancel each other out?
Actually, one does win out, and the speeds that astronauts are travelling at means that time slows down for them and they age slower than people on Earth. This is known as time dilation.
It would be great to speak to a real-life astronaut to find out what this feels like.
Well, everybody, say hello to the British astronaut and I guess now time traveller, Tim Peake. Say, Tim, is this something that you were thinking of when you went to space?
Well, it kind of is, and it's something that we jokingly talk about. And actually, I was having a conversation with Brian Cox about it as well. And we were saying, well, are you younger? Are you older? Because you've got the two competing theories of special relativity and general relativity. So on the one hand, we're travelling fast. So in terms of special relativity, our clock is going to run so that we come back younger. Time is going to slow down for us as we travel faster. But then in terms of general relativity, we're in a lower gravitational environment, so our clock's going to speed up. And the two almost cancel each other out, but you end up, I think, coming back about 0.07 seconds younger. So special relativity just wins out at the end of the day.
And do you feel those 0.07 seconds when you're back on Earth?
The bigger things that you're feeling is all of the effects of space travel. So it's nothing to do with, I think, with the speed that you're traveling. It's your body. It's how your body changes to space flight. So in a weightless environment, of course, your body's going through a rapidly aging process. Actually, when you first go into space, and then when you come back to Earth, all of those changes are reversing. And so, there's a lot of transition there. It's actually quite tiring for the first week back on Earth. You feel the effects of gravity is quite punishing. Your muscles and your bone density have to build back up again. And it probably takes about 6 months in total to recover from a mission to space. So we certainly feel the effects of going into space. But so I think that kind of probably masks any effect that we might feel of feeling that 0.07 seconds younger. That might be wiped out by the crushing effects of gravity.
Well, if we ever did invent a time machine, then it sounds like astronauts would be prime candidates to be our first time travellers.
Absolutely. And that's actually made me think of a question for Tim and our other guests. If you could travel in time with a time machine, where would you want to go and why?
I would want to go to the future. I'd be drawn to the future, I think, just out of curiosity. I'm always looking to the future and thinking, well, how are we going to solve this problem? What's it going to be like? What are our transportation systems going to be? What are our houses going to be like? What energy production will we have in place? All these kind of big questions, and of course they're very pertinent at the moment because we need answers to some of them a little bit sooner than we might have thought. So I'd probably travel a decent stint, maybe 500 years, 500 to 1,000 years into the future, just to see where we are.
I'd love to go back in time and meet some of my ancestors whom I've never met. Also, I never met my grandfather on my father's side because very sadly he died in one of those crashes in London, a train crash in the very early days of fog, and I was a baby at the time. So I was thinking it would be lovely to go back and meet some of those relatives that you've never met and would love to say hello to. And given that it would be all around the sort of Victorian times, certainly for my great-great-grandmother, I might like to pop in on Charles Dickens and knock on his door and introduce myself to see him doing his writing.
So Tim wants to go to the future, Karen wants to go to the past. How about you, Stevie? Where would you want to go?
I would love to go to the future as well. I grew up watching the Star Wars, Star Trek, and I've always been fascinated by travelling through space. And I just think 500,000 years into the future, we could be travelling to different planets, and I just find that fascinating. I would love to see it. If you want to hear more about the mysteries of the universe, then why don't grab a copy of Tim Peake's new book, The Cosmic Diary of Our Incredible Universe, which is out now in all good bookshops. And how about you, Michael?
Well, I'm a big football fan, and I was recently lucky enough to be at the Women's Euros final to see England beat Germany, the first tournament victory for England since the 1966 World Cup. And I was thinking, how great would it be to travel back in time and go to the 1966 World Cup final? I think that is the first place I would go to. But how about you? Where would you go if you had a time machine? Head over to funkidslive.com/mysteries to leave us a voice message telling us not just where, but when you'd like to go and why. All you need to do is tap the big red button to record your message. We can't wait to hear from you.
And there's another question we've got for you too. Are you feeling lucky?
Yes, don't forget to join us in 2 weeks' time for our next mystery, where we'll be exploring whether or not there's such a thing as luck. Until then, stay curious.
Thanks for listening to The Week Junior Show, which is made by the same people that make The Week Junior magazine. You can get a free trial of The Week Junior by heading to theweekjunior.co.uk/podcast and using the code podcast at checkout.